My name is Evan Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and my family spent most of my life reminding me I was the disappointment they wished they hadn't raised. The last thing they ever expected was that I'd be the one holding $100 million inheritance. The night they found out, my mother's voice cut through the silence like glass. You don't know how to handle that kind of money, Evan. Let me manage it before you ruin everything. I remember her eyes. Sharp, hungry, terrified. What she didn't know was that she just handed me the one weapon I needed. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. The kind of betrayal that doesn't scream, it just smiles and says, it's for your own good. Because this story, it's not just about money. It's about what people show you when they think you're worth nothing. I grew up in a house that looked perfect from the street. White siding, trimmed hedges, the smell of Marianne's garden roses drifting through the open kitchen window. From the outside, it was the kind of place people pointed at and said, they've got it together. Inside, it was a quiet battlefield. My mother, Marianne, ran the house like a boardroom. Every dinner felt like a performance review. Tyler got promotions, Sloan got gold stars, and I got reminders of what I wasn't. I remember one dinner when I was 10. The TV was on in the background, tuned to some family sitcom where everyone laughed through their problems. Mom placed a piece of roast chicken on Tyler's plate, another on Sloan's. When she reached me, the platter was empty. She sighed like it was my fault. Next time, be faster. Sweetheart, she said, scraping the bottom of the pan. Tyler grinned at me, that perfect older brother grin that never reached his eyes. Guess even the chicken knows who's the favorite. Dad laughed weakly, the way men do when they've already surrendered years ago. I swallowed the bitterness with water that tasted like metal. I didn't know it then, but that moment would echo in every room I'd ever sit in with them. By high school, the pattern was muscle memory. Tyler made varsity. Mom threw a party. Sloan made honor roll. Mom framed the certificate. I got second place in a local art contest once she barely looked up from her phone. That's nice, Evan, but maybe focus on something that'll pay bills someday. The line stung, not because she was wrong about money, but because she was right about her priorities. When I turned 16, I started working weekends at a hardware store down the road. The place smelled like sawdust and coffee that had burned 3 hours too long. The manager, a guy named Cliff, paid cash if you stayed late to clean. I'd come home after midnight, hands raw, clothes smelling like oil and pine. Mom would be waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed. Where have you been? Working. She'd look at the clock like it was accusing her. You'll burn out before you turn 20 if you keep this up. I wanted to tell her that work was the only time I felt useful, but I just nodded. Then came the night Dad got sick. I was 19. He'd been coughing for months, but nobody took it seriously, not until he collapsed on the porch. I remember the flashing ambulance lights, painting the siding red and blue. Mom shouting for Sloan to get her purse. Tyler stood in the driveway, calling someone from work to say he'd be late the next day. Dad didn't make it. After the funeral, people filled the house with casseroles and empty words. He'd be proud of you kids, they said. Proud of what? Tyler's new SUV? Mom's pearls? When the guests left, the silence felt like concrete. Mom stayed busy, polishing silverware that didn't need it. Sloan went back to her hospital shifts. Tyler started talking about real estate licenses. And me? I just kept working. The group text dwindled to logistics, birthdays, errands. Nothing real. 3 years slipped by like that. My life shrank to a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat downtown. The floors rattled whenever the dryers spun, and the air always smelled faintly of detergent. Rent was cheap enough that I could pretend I was getting by. I'd sit on the edge of the bed some nights, watching the flicker of the laundromat's neon sign through the blinds. It buzzed. Wash. Dry. Fold in fading blue letters. That hum became my lullaby. Sometimes I'd count the cycles by sound, 3 thuds for the old machines, 2 for the new. It was strange comfort, mechanical but steady, unlike anything else in my life. My mom visited once, unannounced. She stepped inside, nose wrinkling at the smell. This is where you live? Yeah. She looked around, her gaze stopping on the cracked window frame. The peeling wallpaper. Evan, you're almost 30. Don't you want more than this? I smiled, tired. Sure, but I'm not sure you'd like the kind of more I want. She didn't understand what I meant, and maybe I didn't either back then. I was 26 when I met Arthur Whitmore for the first and last time. He was Dad's estranged brother, the crazy uncle everyone avoided mentioning. The family said he'd made his money through luck and lawsuits, a mix of genius and madness. But he wasn't crazy when I met him, just quiet. It happened at a 4th of July cookout at Grandma's old house. Arthur sat alone on the porch swing, smoking a thin cigar that smelled of cedar. I was helping clean up when he called out, "You're Richard's boy, aren't you?" I nodded. "Evan." He looked me over like he was memorizing the details. "You work with your hands?" "Mostly." "Good," he said. And that was it. He handed me a worn leather-bound book, no title on the cover. Inside were blank pages and one note on the first: "Fill it with what matters." I didn't know what to do with it. So later that week I wrote him a thank you letter, one of those things you send because you think it's polite. He never replied. I didn't know it then, but that book and that letter would change everything years later. The last time I heard his name before the inheritance was at Dad's funeral. Mom whispered to a neighbor. Arthur didn't even send flowers. She said it like proof that he was heartless. But maybe he was just done with them too. Fast forward to the summer I turned 29. My days blurred: work, microwave dinners, the hum of dryers below. I'd stopped expecting anything from anyone. Then came the call. A man's voice, calm, professional. "Mr. Brooks, this is Daniel Price from Whitmore and Associates. Are you available to discuss the estate of Mr. Arthur Whitmore?" I laughed. "I think you have the wrong Brooks." But he didn't. When I drove to New York 2 days later, the city felt like another planet. I borrowed gas money from a coworker and packed instant coffee in a thermos because I couldn't afford Starbucks. The office building had glass walls and marble floors so polished I could see how small I looked in them. Daniel Price was young, too clean-cut to be real. "Please, have a seat," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside was a number so large I thought it was an accounting error. $103.6 million, he said, as if reading a grocery list. "You are the primary heir to Mr. Whitmore's estate." I blinked. "Why me?" He smiled faintly. Mr. Whitmore was very specific. He wanted it to go to the family member who never asked for anything. I sat there, numb. I thought about my mother's face if she heard that. Tyler's smirk turning to silence. The hum of the laundromat that had been my ceiling for years. Daniel kept talking something about trusts, clauses, taxes, but I barely heard him until one sentence stuck. "There is an ethical provision in the will. It's minor, but well, we'll go over that later." I didn't know it then, but that clause would become the invisible wire running through everything that came after. When I stepped out of the building, the city noise felt different. Cars honked like laughter, sunlight bouncing off glass. I had walked in a ghost. I walked out with power I didn't even know how to hold. But as strange calm settled over me, one thought surfaced clear as glass. Now I'll find out who they really are. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't tell anyone about the inheritance. Not Mom. Not Tyler. Not Sloan. The money sat in an account with more zeros than I'd ever seen. But my life looked the same squeaky door, same flickering bathroom light, same car that coughed like a smoker every morning. I went to work at the hardware store and stocked shelves like nothing had changed. That's when the idea began quietly, like a spark under wet wood. I wanted to see them without the mask, to know whether blood really meant loyalty or just leverage. The first test was simple. I called Mom. She answered on the third ring, her voice clipped, like she'd been busy being important. "Evan, what's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm short on rent. Maybe a couple hundred. I'll pay you back next week." There was a pause long enough for me to hear the sound of her watch ticking. Then she sighed. "Evan, we've talked about this. You can't keep living like a child. Why don't you let your brother get you an interview at his firm? I just need a little help until—" "I'm sorry, honey. I'm too busy for this right now." The line went dead. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear until the dial tone turned into silence. It wasn't even the rejection that hurt, it was how casual it was. Like she'd swatted away a fly. Next, I called Tyler. He picked up with his usual swagger. "Yo, little bro. What's up?" I told him the same story. Even laughed a little to make it sound less desperate. He chuckled. "Still hustling those side gigs? Maybe it's time to get a real job, man. It's just a short-term thing." "Yeah, sure. Look, I'd help, but you know how it is. Mortgage, kids, taxes." You'll figure it out. He hung up before I could say another word. I didn't bother with Sloan. She'd tell me to make better choices. But then I saw Hannah's name in my contacts. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe years, but something made me press call. When she answered, her voice was warm, surprised. Evan? Hey, everything okay? I hesitated, then repeated the same lie. Her answer came without thinking. Text me your address. I'll drop by. 3 hours later, she showed up in her dented hatchback with a bag of groceries and a thermos of soup. She placed them on the counter and pulled out a folded $20 bill. I know it's not much, she said, smiling shyly, but it'll help a bit. I tried to refuse, but she shook her head. Don't. Family helps family. That line stuck in my chest. Family helps family, because in my world, they didn't. After she left, I sat at the table staring at the food. The smell of tomato soup filled the apartment, rich and real. My phone buzzed again, Mom texting a Bible verse about hard work. Tyler sending a meme about grind culture. I turned the phone off. That night, I decided to push further. If kindness was rare, I'd test for it. I'd stage my own downfall and see who tried to catch me. A week later, Mom called out of nowhere. Her tone was honeyed, too smooth. Evan, we should have dinner. It's been too long. Tyler can bring the kids. Sloan has the weekend off. I almost laughed. The timing was too perfect. But I agreed. That Saturday, I cleaned the apartment like it was an exam. Bought a rotisserie chicken, some sides, even lit a candle to make it smell decent. At 6 sharp, they arrived in a flurry of perfume and judgment. Mom stepped in first, scanning the room. Oh, you're still here? You'd save money if you moved in with Tyler. Tyler chuckled. Yeah, man, we've got a guest room. Though, fair warning, kids wake up early. Sloan smiled politely. It's cozy. We sat down. Mom looked at the food and frowned. You didn't cook? No time, I said. She sighed dramatically. You know, sometimes I wonder what you do all day. They ate, and the usual conversation started. Tyler bragging about sales, Sloan showing vacation pictures, Mom talking about some charity gala. I nodded, smiled, pretended to listen. Inside, every word felt like sandpaper. When the lull came, I said, Hannah stopped by last week. Mom's fork froze midair. Hannah raise? Yeah. She brought groceries when I was short on rent. She didn't even hesitate. Sloan frowned. That girl? Doesn't she still work at that coffee place? Yeah. Mom set her fork down. Evan, I hope you didn't make her feel obligated. She's not in a position to be helping anyone. She offered, I said quietly. Tyler laughed. Classic Hannah. Always playing Mother Teresa. In this stip, in the Diddy Cape side, Mom nodded approvingly. Exactly. You need to learn some pride, Evan. Don't take advantage of people's pity. Something inside me snapped, small but sharp. I wanted to tell her that Hannah's kindness had more weight than every lecture she'd ever given me. But I didn't. After dinner, as they left, Mom hugged me stiffly. We love you, Evan. We just want what's best for you. In Mom's speak, that meant, we love you as long as you stay beneath us. When the door closed, the apartment felt smaller than ever. The leftover chicken sat cold on the counter. I didn't clean up. I just sat there, letting the silence spread. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, the hum of dryers below vibrating through the floorboards. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd stop waiting for their approval. I'd start planning. The first step was distance. Emotional, then physical. Over the next month, I spoke less and listened more. Every call from Mom came with a favor hidden inside. Every text from Tyler had a brag tucked between lines. Even Sloane's concern felt rehearsed. So, I created a new rule: never explain. When Mom asked how work was, I said, fine. When Tyler asked if I was dating anyone, I said, nope. When Sloane asked if I needed anything, I said, I'm good. The less I gave, the more curious they became. Then, one night, Mom called again. Evan, Tyler's birthday is next week. I want you to come. I hesitated, then agreed. Maybe it was time to let the experiment play out. That dinner at Mom's house was the turning point. The house hadn't changed, spotless, overdecorated, reeking of lemon polish and performance. Tyler was already there, glass of wine in hand, talking about real estate trends. Mom hugged me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look thin. Are you eating? I'm fine. We sat down. The conversation turned to me like a spotlight. So, Mom began, have you thought about letting Tyler help you find something stable? Tyler smirked. I could get you in somewhere, bro. Entry level, of course. I forced a smile. I'll think about it. Mom leaned forward. Evan, you can't live paycheck to paycheck forever. Sloan chimed in. Maybe she's right. You need a plan. I looked at their faces, three people who saw me as a project, not a person. Then Mom said it. You're so secretive lately. What's going on with you? I laughed quietly. You hung up on me 2 weeks ago when I asked for $200. Her cheeks flushed. Don't be dramatic. I was busy. Tyler snorted. You really gotta stop with the sob stories. Something inside me went still, cold. The rest of dinner blurred. When I left, they were still laughing. Driving home, I realized I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt focused. They thought I was weak. Fine. Let them think that. Because when the truth finally came out, when they realized who I'd become, it wouldn't be loud. It would be surgical. And the first cut was coming soon. The night after Tyler's birthday dinner, I sat in the dark staring at my phone. The screen glowed with missed calls, Mom, Tyler, Sloan, all acting like nothing had happened. They'd laughed at me, called me lazy, but now they wanted to talk. I didn't answer. Instead, I went for a drive. The streets were empty, rain smearing the headlights into streaks of silver. Every mile felt like distance between who I'd been and who I was becoming. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw the old diner sign flickering at the edge of town, Blue Finch Cafe. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee and sugar. Hannah was behind the counter, tying her apron. When she saw me, her smile softened. You look like you've been running from something. Or towards something, I said, sitting down. She poured coffee without asking. Which is it? I stared at the steam rising from the cup. Maybe both. She nodded. Sometimes that's the same thing. That night, she talked, and I listened about work. The kids at the community center. The old espresso machine that coughed worse than my car. It was the first conversation in years where no one asked me to be someone else. Before I left, she said, you know, Uncle Arthur used to donate here. Not much, but every month. He never told anyone. I froze. He did? Yeah. The director said he'd come by sometimes. Quiet guy. Always sat in the same booth yours, actually. That detail lodged in my chest like a heartbeat. Arthur had been watching long before I'd realized. Over the next few weeks, I stayed quiet. Went to work, saved receipts, kept my head down. But word spreads fast in small towns. Tyler's friend from the bank mentioned something to him, an attorney in New York calling about trust verification. Tyler told Mom. And that's when things began to tilt. One evening, I came home to find my mother waiting outside my apartment building. Raincoat buttoned to the neck. Expression carved in stone. We need to talk, she said. About what? Don't play dumb, Evan. I know about the will. My pulse spiked. You talked to Daniel Price? I left a message, she said, unbothered. He didn't give me details, but I'm not an idiot. You think you can hide something that big from family? Her voice was low, measured, but her eyes were wild. I realized then that to her, money wasn't a resource, it was oxygen. I wasn't hiding it, I said. I was just figuring things out. Figuring things out? She scoffed. You're not capable of managing that kind of responsibility. Tyler can help you. He's already talking to some investors. You told him? Of course I did. He's family. Family. She said it like a threat. I stepped closer, every muscle tight. Get out, Mom. She blinked, stunned. Excuse me? You heard me. You're making a mistake, she hissed. When you come to your senses, don't expect me to fix it for you. The door slammed behind her. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel empty, it felt earned. That night, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Tyler's name flashing over and over. When I finally answered, his tone was mocking. Come on, man. You really thought you could hide 100 million from us? We're family. I didn't reply. He laughed. Relax. Mom and I just want to make sure you don't do anything stupid. We'll help you handle it. The same line Hannah had used weeks earlier, but now it sounded poisonous. When I hung up, something inside me hardened. They weren't worried about me. They were circling me. The next morning, I called Daniel Price. I want to restructure the trust, I said. He hesitated. Mr. Brooks, may I ask why? Because I don't trust my family, I said, and I want to make sure they never touch a dime. He paused, then said quietly, secrecy is power, Mr. Brooks. Use it wisely. I spent the next month doing exactly that. I met with Daniel twice more, learned how the trust worked, how shell companies were formed, how assets could move like shadows if you knew where to place the light. By the end of the month, Vale and North Holdings existed my company, my shield. On paper, it was owned by Mason Vale, an alias tied to an old post office box and a digital trail that led nowhere near me. I hired a woman named Liv Tran through a private firm, sharp, discreet. The kind of person who could run an empire without leaving fingerprints. She asked, "What's the end goal?" "Control," I said, "not over them, over myself." But the truth was murkier. Control was just another word for revenge, waiting to grow teeth. Weeks later, I started hearing whispers, Tyler bragging to clients about a big family investment coming through soon. Mom networking at church luncheons about our upcoming trust. They'd turn my inheritance into their fantasy. So, I gave them something real to lose. I didn't have to expose them directly. All I had to do was wait. People who believe they're untouchable always dig their own graves. The first crack came with a rumor. Tyler bragged to one of his investors that our family's estate is expanding into real estate, dropping my name like it was currency. The next day, Mom called. Her tone was sugary sweet. "Evan, sweetheart, Tyler's hosting a small dinner for potential partners this weekend. You should come. It'll be good for your image." My image. Not me. Still, I agreed. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, and I wanted to see what performance they'd stage this time. The restaurant was one of those sleek downtown places where the lighting was dim and the prices were loud. Tyler stood near the bar, laughing too hard, a glass of whiskey in hand. When he spotted me, he waved big, too big. Here he is, the man of the hour. The table went silent as everyone turned to look at me. Mom beamed like a politician. "Evan's just humble," she said quickly. "He doesn't like to talk about the inheritance. But we're all so proud." Inheritance. The word dropped like a match in gasoline. I looked at the faces around me, hungry eyes, calculating smiles. Tyler clapped my shoulder. "You gotta teach me your ways, bro. Maybe introduce me to your lawyer sometime?" I forced a smile. "You'd have to die first." They laughed, not realizing I wasn't joking. Dinner went on, filled with shallow toasts and deeper lies. I barely spoke, watching how they maneuvered, how Mom carefully hinted that I was open to opportunities. After dessert, Tyler leaned in. "Listen, man, there's a property downtown. Killer deal. If you front part of it, I'll handle everything else. We'll triple the return." I sipped my water. "And what do I get?" He blinked, surprised by the question. "We're family, Evan. You get to be part of something real for once." That sentence for once stuck under my skin like a splinter. I didn't answer. I just stood up, left cash for my meal, and walked out. Outside, the air was cold, sharp with rain. I stood under the awning until I could breathe again. The city lights blurred through the drizzle. And I thought of Arthur's leather-bound book. Fill it with what matters. What mattered now wasn't proving them wrong, it was showing them who I really was, without ever raising my voice. The next few weeks were quiet, but tension hummed beneath everything. Tyler kept calling, pitching deals. Mom sent texts about family unity and legacy planning. Even Sloan reached out, her messages softer, uncertain. Then one afternoon, I received an envelope under my door. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note in Sloan's handwriting. "If you ever need to protect yourself, use this." I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting a virus. Instead, files opened: bank statements, loan documents, credit reports, all in my name. Accounts I'd never opened, credit cards I'd never touched. Marianne Brooks and Tyler Brooks were listed as authorized guarantors. They'd used my identity years ago, small debts. Quietly paid off, but enough to prove they'd treated my name like a tool. I sat back, staring at the screen. My heartbeat slowed until it was almost calm. Not rage, not shock, just understanding. They'd been building this long before I had money. When I called Sloan that night, her voice was shaking. "I found them on Mom's desk. I didn't know what to do." "You did the right thing. She's not a monster, Evan. She's just She's exactly what she taught us to be, I said, then hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up sketching outlines in a notebook lines. Arrows. Connections. By dawn, the plan was forming. I wouldn't destroy them. I'd let their own greed do it for me. Step 1. Make Masonvale real. Step 2. Give them the illusion of access. Step 3. Pull the ground out from under them when they step forward. The first move was small. Liv, my COO, transferred a fraction of the trust into a high-yield venture labeled Urban Futures Initiative. On paper, it looked like an open investment opportunity. Tyler found it within a week, probably through his banker friend. He called, breathless, "Dude, that project? Mason Vale? That's you, right?" I hesitated. "Why?" "Because we could partner. You front the deal, I'll bring the buyers." "Send me the proposal," I said. He did sloppy numbers, unrealistic projections, but full of arrogance. I told Liv to vet him as if he were any other applicant. She called a week later. "He's leveraged everything house. Vehicles. Even his accounts. He's desperate." "Approve the proposal," I said. "Approve it?" she asked, stunned. "Yes. And schedule a review in 6 months." "Why 6?" "Because that's when the performance clause expires." She paused. "You're sure you want to do this?" I looked out at the lake through the glass walls of my new house. The water was still, black as ink. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just letting the rules play out." That night, thunder rolled over the water. I poured a drink, sat in silence, and let the sound fill the room. The storm didn't scare me anymore. I was starting to understand it. The invitation came in a silver envelope. Heavy paper, embossed logo, my alias printed cleanly at the top. Mr. Mason Vale. Vale and North Holdings' primary sponsor, Urban Futures Gala. The irony didn't escape me. A year ago, I couldn't afford to fix my car. Now, my company's name was printed above city mayors and Fortune 500 logos. And the best part? None of them knew the quiet man behind that name used to live above a laundromat. The gala was held at the Grand Orpheum, a cathedral of glass and chandeliers. The kind of place Mom used to drool over in magazines. The moment I walked in, the air smelled of champagne and ego. Waiters moved like choreography, and every surface gleamed like it had been polished with pride. I kept my expression neutral. A dark suit, simple tie, slicked hair. Not the Evan they remembered. Not the disappointment. Not the charity case. Just power in disguise. The night's program listed the event committee. Marianne Brooks, Tyler Brooks, and several local investors I already owned shares of through Vale and North. The irony felt surgical. From the corner of the ballroom, I spotted them: Mom, Tyler, and Sloan. Mom was radiant in a sequined navy gown, her posture regal, every gesture calculated. Tyler was mid-story, laughing with two developers, gesturing like the world owed him attention. Sloan stood slightly apart, holding a drink, quiet, her eyes scanning the crowd. They hadn't seen me yet. A staff member approached, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Vale, the press would love a quick photo before dinner." I smiled faintly. "Let's keep it brief." The camera flashed. The lights were blinding. For a moment, I imagined Marianne seeing that photo in the papers the next morning, not realizing she'd been standing 10 feet from me the entire night. Dinner began. Tables glittered under candlelight. I found my assigned seat near the front, right across from, of course, Mom and Tyler. She glanced at me with polite curiosity. "I don't believe we've met," she said. "I'm Marianne Brooks. My son's company helped coordinate this event." I offered my hand, letting the smallest smirk touch my lips. "Mason Vale, pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Brooks." She shook my hand, eyes narrowing slightly, like she was trying to place me. "Are you local?" "Moved here recently," I said. "My firm handles investment portfolios and urban development projects." Tyler leaned in, slick grin in place. "Vale and North, right? We've actually collaborated with one of your subsidiaries, Midwest Urban Development." "Ah," I said softly. "Good people." He grinned wider, oblivious. "Yeah, I'm actually heading one of their biggest projects this quarter. We're making some real moves." "Impressive," I said, sipping my wine. "I look forward to seeing the results." Mom smiled proudly. "He's been doing wonderfully. I always say hard work pays off." "I'm sure it does," I replied, voice cool. Sloane looked up at me then long enough for something to flicker in her eyes. A flash of recognition, but she said nothing. The evening moved into speeches. Politicians, executives, investors. Tyler took the stage next, his confidence practically glowing. He launched into his speech about integrity, innovation, and family legacy. Every word dripped with false sincerity. My family's always believed in building something that lasts, he said, smiling toward our table. That's what this event is about: community, family, and trust. The applause was polite. I clapped once. Then came the auction, exclusive contracts, development rights, partnerships. The crown jewel, $1 million land partnership offered by the Urban Futures Committee. Mom turned to Tyler, whispering, "This is your chance." He nodded, raising his number paddle. I raised mine, too. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tyler looked across the table, amused. "Didn't think you were into real estate, Mr. Vale." "I'm into potential," I said. The bids climbed. 200,000, 3, 5. Tyler kept going, his pride swelling with every raise. His voice got louder, his smile more forced. Mom beamed beside him, clutching his arm. At 800,000, Tyler hesitated. Sweat glistened at his temple. I raised my paddle again. 1 million. The room went silent. Tyler laughed nervously. "Guess I'm outmatched tonight." The host smiled. "Sold to Mr. Vale of Vale and North Holdings." Applause filled the air, but I barely heard it. All I could hear was the slow, quiet crack of control leaving their hands. After the auction, Mom leaned over, voice soft and eager. "Mr. Vale, if you're investing in local projects, perhaps we could connect. My son has incredible experience managing development assets." I tilted my head. "That's so?" "Absolutely," she said, touching Tyler's arm. "He's helped lead multiple ventures. He'd be an asset to any team." I met her eyes. "I'll keep that in mind." Then I stood, excused myself, and walked toward the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, steady. From behind me, a familiar voice whispered, "Evan?" I turned. Sloane stood there, pale, clutching her clutch like a secret. "I knew it," she said quietly. "It's you." I didn't answer. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Doing what?" She stepped closer. "They don't know who you are. You're letting them embarrass themselves." "I'm letting them be themselves," I said simply. Her eyes glistened. "Mom's going to lose everything." "She already did," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." Sloane looked down, shaking her head. "You're not like them, Evan. Don't let this turn you into them." Her words lingered even as I turned away. Maybe that's the only language they ever understood. When I went back inside, the host was announcing a surprise segment, a tribute video from the Arthur Whitmore Foundation. The screen lit up. Archival footage of Uncle Arthur appeared, his gravelly voice filling the room. He was sitting at a table, old hands folded. "I always believed wealth is a mirror," he said. "It doesn't change who you are. It reveals it. And if you're hearing this, then maybe you've been tested, too." The video cut to clips of the South Maple Community Center, the one Hannah worked at. Arthur was there, smiling at children, handing out supplies. He added, "Sometimes the ones we overlook are the ones who hold the world together." The camera panned over two names on a donation plaque, Hannah Reyes and Evan Brooks. The crowd murmured. Mom's face went rigid. Tyler froze. Sloane's hand flew to her mouth. I stood there, silent, my chest tight. Arthur had tied everything together: the reason, the legacy, the truth. For the first time, I didn't need to say a word. The applause rose slowly, polite but confused. The MC thanked the foundation, moved on to closing remarks. Mom turned to me, eyes narrowing, voice trembling. You knew him." "I did," I said calmly. "And he knew me." Her lips parted, but no sound came. I adjusted my cufflinks, offered her the same polite smile she'd given me a lifetime ago. "Good evening, Mrs. Brooks," I said. "It was a pleasure meeting you." Then I walked out, leaving her staring after me as the chandelier light fractured across the crystal glass, reflecting her own stunned face 100 times over. Outside, the city hummed beneath the night sky, and I could finally breathe again. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the shadow in my family. I was the storm they never saw coming. I didn't go home that night. I drove. Nowhere specific, just out of the city. Through the soft, orange glow of streetlights until the road thinned into silence. By the time I reached the lake house, dawn had started bleeding across the sky, the kind of pale light that makes everything look new and haunted at the same time. Inside, the house was quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced the still water, and for a long time, I just stood there watching my reflection blur against the glass. I didn't look angry. I didn't even look triumphant. I just looked done. My phone buzzed on the counter. A dozen missed calls, all from Mom. I let it ring until it stopped. Then another came through. Tyler. I picked up this time. Bro, what the hell happened? His voice was panicked now, stripped of its charm. Investors are pulling out. They said something about contract clauses, performance reviews. Do you know anything about that? I took a slow sip of coffee. Yeah, I do. Then fix it. You can't just sit there. I didn't break it, Tyler. You did. He went silent. Remember when you said I'd never be part of something real? I asked quietly. You were right. I built something real on my own. He cursed under his breath, muttering, "You're insane," before hanging up. The silence after was cleaner than any apology he could have given me. By noon, Liv called with updates. Midwest Urban's assets are collapsing. Marianne Brooks's accounts have been flagged. She tried to open a new line of credit this morning, declined. Good, I said softly. What's next? Nothing, I said. We're done. But she hesitated. Are we? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure. Later that afternoon, I drove into town. The Blue Finch Cafe looked the same, blue awning, flickering neon sign. Hannah inside wiping down the counter. When she saw me, she smiled. That easy kind of smile that didn't need explanations. You look tired, she said. Feels like I just finished a marathon no one saw. Did you win? I thought about that. Maybe I just stopped running. She poured me coffee, slid a small paper cup across the counter. On the lid, she'd written in black marker, "Pay it forward." Arthur's words echoed in my head. Wealth is a mirror. Maybe he hadn't just been testing me. Maybe he'd been warning me. As I stepped back into the rain, I realized revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making sure I never became them. Still, part of me knew this wasn't over. Because secrets don't die quietly, especially when money's involved. And somewhere, deep in the marble ruins of my family's pride, something was still waiting to crawl back to the surface. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, the one everyone underestimates until it's too late, then you know how it feels to finally stop chasing their approval. My name is Evan Brooks. I stopped asking for love that had a price tag, and I built a life they could never buy. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not proving them wrong, just proving to yourself that you were never broken. If you've ever been betrayed by family, subscribe because this story isn't over yet.